Now, if you've got kids who are starting to develop an interest in gaming, it can be a bit of a worrying time. You kind of find yourself asking as a parent, how do you give them the freedom to game, but still keep them safe online? Well, I'm really hoping my next guest can help us. He is Andy Robertson. He's a gaming journalist and author of Taming Gaming, Guide Your Child to Healthy Video Game Habits. Good evening, Andy. How are you?
Good evening. Yeah, pretty good.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on the show. Now, I'm a parent. I've got two boys who are very much into their gaming, but it can be quite worrying when your child is maybe getting to the age where they're kind of asking maybe for a Switch or a Nintendo or whatever device they're asking for. What kind of things can parents put in place to make sure that their child is gaming in a safe way?
I think one of the worries that we have is we kind of feel like we need to sort of reduce games. We don't want to encourage it because it kind of is already happening too much. And so that can mean we kind of take a step back and sort of don't do the kind of the parenting we would do in other areas. And so most of the advice I offer to parents in the book is finding ways to engage with games, but with your child as a kind of a family unit. So that might be games you play together. That might be they've got a favourite game and you're like, oh, could I watch you play? And it's just trying to create really nice conversations that mean that gaming isn't something that happens away from you or something that happens without you.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking to my producer, Chris, about this, and I was saying, look, I'll be completely honest. The 11-year-old and the 14-year-old, when they, especially the 14-year-old, when he started gaming, it was very new to me, and he would always game in the lounge. It would be connected to the sort of family TV, and he would game maybe for an hour, and that would be it. Now, as he's got older, he's got a TV in his room, he's got his own device in his room. And, and unless I'm kind of prepared to be sat in his room all the time policing what he's doing, as a parent, there's got to be a level of trust there that he's going to be sensible in what he's doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think one thing it's important to say that if it's got out of control and you feel like your child is playing more than is healthy, it's completely okay to set some limits. But I think doing that with them, so having a conversation, maybe you're playing too much, other things aren't happening, I'm not seeing you very much. And most families I talk to, the child is usually relatively reasonable in that setting. And then together with your child, you can agree, OK, this is an appropriate amount. But what's quite nice is all modern consoles let you set up with a PIN number how long the child can play before they need you to put that PIN in a second time so that they can have more time. And so it's not then you kind of policing them. It's more like a tool for them to ensure that they have a kind of a varied sort of range of things going on in their lives. But I think it's important. We are parents, and part of our role is to set some limits sometimes, and that's a really important thing to do.
I mean, I'll be completely honest. I think lockdown did not help with our household, because I remember feeling during lockdown it was kind of their only way of communicating with their friends. So, they have the gaming headsets and, they'd be sort of playing whatever game it was with their friends. And I was kind of thinking, well, at least they can chat to their friends and they can spend time with their friends. But, moving on, a couple of years on, they're still in that bad habit of, my eldest, if I let him, he would be in his bedroom all day at the weekend, just gaming.
Yeah, and so, that sort of transitioning from this very peculiar time of lockdown where kind of all bets were off in terms of what was right and we were just kind of coping, That's a completely fine thing to do. And I think games there really contributed to children's mental health and their kind of ability to stay in touch with friends. But coming out of that, it is now a kind of a resetting. OK, what's healthy for our family? And one way that some families do this is to kind of have appointment times when they kind of play together. And that can be, games that maybe you're watching your child play, but also there's loads of games that kids love to play that actually are multiple players and are accessible, playable by parents as well, even if you don't have a lot of expertise. And so I'm often sort of suggesting some of those. It's just finding ways to kind of break that up so that it's not just them and the gaming against you as a parent. But I hear what you're saying. There's not an easy answer, and it's kind of like other areas of parenting. The kind of the effort we put in does make a difference, even though it seems like often it isn't.
something we've recently come up against is being asked, oh, is it okay if I download this game? And you look and it's an 18. And I'll say to him, but you're not 18. And he goes, yeah, but all my friends are playing it. I'm the only one not allowed. And, there's certain games that, I used to play when, pre-children, that's still, going now. And, has got some, very adult content. And I'll sort of say to him, well, I'm really not sure you should be playing that. But then when they're saying to you, well, I'm the only friend, I'm the only person out of my whole friendship group who's not allowed, as a parent, sometimes you sort of think, oh, am I being too strict? Am I not being too strict? It's a really tricky one, that.
Yeah, and you can sort of feel like they're sort of missing out. And I think, kids know that. They can play that card, to get what they want. And I think with games, it's important to understand that some games are designed and created for enjoyment by adults. Those games that are rated 18 plus are designed for grown-ups. They're not designed for children, although older teenagers do play them. And those PEGI ratings, the numbers that you see on the boxes or on the digital storefront, are really useful as a really clear guide. What is this age? So Fortnite would be a 12, Apex Legends, another popular game, would be a 16, and then something like Grand Theft Auto would be an 18. And the experience in those games is very different. The violence is very different in those games. And so it's important that as a parent, you can make an informed decision. Is my child mature enough to cope with what they're seeing? And context is really important. If they're playing a game on their own, then I'd be more cautious about the content that they're getting access to. If they're playing it in a family space, then you can talk them through it, and it's like watching a film together. You can kind of process it. You can also, in the same way of setting time limits, you can also set limits for what age ratings you can access games. And again, on that same pin, you can say, well, this console can play PEGI 12, but not older, without me having a say on what's going on.
Another thing that I find myself sort of questioning is, they both boys, they have the gaming headsets and they have the gaming passes so that they can play a variety of games. And yes, they're both, they know to ask before they download a different game or a game that may be slightly older than their ages, so they're 11 and 14. But I find myself worrying about who they're playing with. Is there something you can put in place to make sure they only are playing with genuine friends?
Yeah, so again, on the console, you can specify, who can make friend requests and what messages can they send. Can they contact friends of friends, which is obviously quite a wide network, or is it just people that you've met in the real world and you've exchanged a kind of a code with? But again, I think there's no kind of substitute for just actually saying, oh, you're obviously really into this game. I'd love to watch you play it. Can you tell me what's going on? And although many parents think they feel like they would maybe be intruding on a sort of a child's kind of play space, actually, my experience is that most kids really love it when us as parents take an interest and maybe take half an hour just to sort of sit and watch them. And my kids, they love that. In fact, some of their favourite times is they're like, oh, I'm just doing this game. Do you want to come and see this new bit I've got to?
Yes.
And once you're in the room, then you hear the conversations and you go, oh, who are you talking to? Or who's on your team? Like, what other conversations are going on? And as well as that, it's important to understand that they might use other things to communicate with their friends on games as well. Services like Discord, social networks, are a common way that children kind of organise themselves into groups to then go and play, which is a really nice thing. But those are services that are designed for adults and they don't have the kind of parental controls in them. So again, if your child's using those, you want to be involved in that conversation and be aware of who they're talking to.
Yes. Gosh, it's a minefield, isn't it? Thank you.
Yeah, it is a bit. But I think with a bit of kind of looking into it, it kind of changes from that kind of scary space to actually, oh, it's not as complicated as I thought. And there are some really nice ways that you can take steps towards this. And my experience with families is that actually it can turn into quite a positive thing. So I just wanted to, encourage you to kind of, get involved with your kids' gaming and sort of turn that corner. And it isn't easy, but with a bit of effort, it can really turn around.
Yeah. I mean, I know the 11-year-old, he's always like, oh, Mum, come and look what I've built, and he's in Minecraft and he's built this amazing sort of hotel and it does this and it does that. And you're like, that's amazing. And he'll spend a lot of time sort of crafting these things. And, that's really positive. And I think that's a really positive way of using gaming. The slightly older one who wants to be, on the 18 games and, shooting lots of people. I think that's the element of gaming that worries me.
Yeah, and I think where the game is too mature for a child, then it's trying to work out, well, how do you do that? Obviously it's fine to say no, But if you can find an alternative game, and actually the book that I created offers these alternatives. So say, if your child's not ready for something like Call of Duty, quite understandably, if they're not 18, then here's 4 or 5 other games that are really good games that your child will love, but are more age appropriate. And there are usually those age appropriate alternatives that a bit of Googling will soon sort of turn them up. But again, it does need a bit of research from the parent, and it can be hard to do that because it seems like a very complicated world, but a bit of time and it starts to make more sense.
Andy, thank you so much for your time. That's been brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure.